Are you seeing the screen with the slides or no?
We don't.
Okay, let me do it again.
I had it before, but then you removed it. So go ahead and share again. And also use presentation mode on your PowerPoint.
The screen is not moving now.
Just press enter every time and it should move.
Let me come out because the screen actually is, screen is not moving at all. Sorry about that. Najib this is Dr. Najib Rahimahullah. Today my presentation is Behavior Science Analysis, Muslim Prayers versus Momin Prayer. This will be my second one. The last week I present the major concept about it. And everybody can say Durood Sharif, recite the Durood Sharif. So thank you very much for coming. What I'm going to do today is recap my previous presentation quickly and then answer your question. Two questions were asked to me, and so I like to go into the presentation and explain based on the presentation those two questions. Hopefully everybody has listened to my last week presentation because that is one of the pinnacle presentation to understand the concept. And that was, I think, a 25-minute presentation, but then followed by half an hour of discussion. So that will be very helpful to understand. So last week we discussed about two important concepts, the conscious mind and unconscious mind. This is not a recent finding or anything. So, before even Aristotle time, and this was discussed, you can find Hippocrates, Aristotle, Socrates, and all those philosophers talk about unconscious mind during that time. So this is ongoing for a while, and in the medieval time it was discussed and all those things. So this is ongoing process. But basically in the last 100 years, I can say psychiatry, these are the people in psychiatry talk in detail about unconscious mind. Significantly will be Sigmund Freud. I went into minor detail about what his thinking was in the primary process of thinking, second process of thinking, and the conflict they used defense mechanism, and I went into detail about how defense mechanism helps to mitigate the process. The other way of looking into it is id, ego, and superego. And then when there's a conflict comes, you have a defense mechanism which comes in to may soothe out or helps you get it done. So these are the two ways Sigmund Freud thought about it. Then Carl Jung talk about collective unconsciousness, and Jacques Lacan talk about his way of thinking. So these are the three main psychiatrists who talk in minor detail, and their work is in books and all those things, and so it's all available for all of us. So that was actually very helpful for us to understand what goes through unconscious mind of every individual. And if we fix our unconscious mind, the conscious mind has a clear pathway to go. So that was the main theme, to fix on unconscious mind, because we basically work on our conscious mind, but not realizing what's the background noises and what's our theme is going unconsciously that really affects our conscious mind. So if we fix the unconscious mind, the conscious mind can perform much better. These are the location which we discussed about it last time. The subconscious mind is usually located over here. I went into minor detail, and the conscious mind is over there. So that was one thing I last time talked about it. These are the connections from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind. This is the prefrontal cortex, where the executive decision taking place, and your logic, or you can say the hikmah, take place. So this is conscious and conscious mind connections. And these are the tractology, where the conscious and unconscious minds are connected together. So they are all sync in. Let's put it that way. Everything is connected. It's a matter of understanding. We went into minor detail about id, ego, and superego, what it means and what it implies to us. And that is the basic concept you need to understand in unconscious mind, that there's always a conflict going on between id and superego, and the ego is the one who try to work it out to make it better. So that's one thing. And then we went into the different defense mechanism. Defense mechanism, always remember, these are the few defense mechanism, but there are more than 100 defense mechanisms. So basically, they work at an unconscious mind, and you are not aware what you're going through it. That's why it works at the unconscious mind. And that is where psychiatry comes to play and help us, that, hey, this is what your internal thinking is going on. And even that's what a psychiatrist or psychologist try to assess, what are the thinking going in unconscious mind, that or your behavior pattern coming. And these are the behavior pattern they recognize. You usually don't recognize it because you are in a process of doing it. But if you think hard enough, you will feel it. But usually people who are trained in this will literally, once they know you, they can tell these are the defense mechanisms you're using at unconscious level. Usually the psychiatrist, psychologist does that, or even a trained therapist who are very trained can literally guide you. So that these are very important. So in Quran, which we already mentioned, that the id is the nafs, ego is the qalb, and the superego is the ruh. And that you can go in minor detail. Dr. Israr Ahmed video also, he explained very nicely about that. And so the Islam also talk about it very clearly. So there's always there for our guidance and help. And the other thing which always keep in mind, that it developed at the time when you're in early infancy. The ego developed a few months later at birth, and the superego developed at age of 6 till the puberty. That's the timing period where these thinking process starts in your body. And so everybody has it. Whether you acknowledge or not is your choice, but everybody has it. So coming back, a couple of things I need to talk before we answer the question. So we talk about sympathy, empathy, and compassion. Sympathy is sharing the emotion of a person. Empathy is able to recognize and share the emotion. That's the difference between sympathy and empathy. And compassion is empathy with desire to elevate the suffering. So these are very important component in Islam, as well as in the ego functioning. And just want to let you know that these are very important functionings of how you work. By the way, these either three of them are not defense mechanism. Even patience is not defense mechanism. So anyhow, I look into minor detail and I found that patience is not a defense mechanism, but I will go into detail why it is not and how we look into it. So that will be helpful for all of us. So let's see what, okay. So the question, let me come to the question which was asked last time that will help us go forward. So the question was asked, based on my presentation and understanding all this presentation, where do we go? How we will make our life better? Now you know that ego is the one who handle the id and superego conflict and try to solve the problem. So the question is, what can we do to make it better? How can we change our lives so that unconscious mind works better? So that's a really good question to ask, and I appreciate for asking that question. So the answer to your question, based on psychiatry and psychology, is I will say one thing: is ownership. So just like you are a family member and you have the ownership of your house, taking care of your house and taking care of everything. So I give you a card of ownership and say, you have three choices: id, ego, and superego. Pick one choice and put the ownership over there. And that will answer your question. So if you have an ownership and give to id or nafs, there your life will go based on that. You will run with your nafs. Very simple. Or basically your id or nafs. So when you put all your energy or ownership to id, what will happen is that the superego will fight with your id significantly. A superego, let me explain more in detail. Superego you drive from your parents or from your community, or you're learning from higher sources, and that will be your guidance. Usually that is from psychiatry terminology. That's what superego is. That's how we are raised. Islam talk more about ruh concept and the guidance from Allah and all those things. So that's what Islamic concept is. But psychiatry does not acknowledge anything about religion. So they talk about influence of the parents or the guidance at a higher level. They acknowledge that. So basically, if you put all the ownership to it, then it will run free and say, I will get everything what I want. And remember that it wants instant gratification. So the ego has a lot of problem because the superego will literally fight with it. And then what really happened is that ego has to find a defense mechanism to handle this issue. Okay. So what it will do is, when the id has ownership, then you will take narcissistic defense mechanism: denial, distortion, projection. There are more than these. There are more than 100 defense mechanisms. So they will use the narcissistic defense mechanism, or we may use the neurotic or immature defense mechanism. These are the where they're going to start using that to accomplish their goal, right? And they will not use mature defense. They may use some mature defense mechanism, but much lesser extent. So you feel like they're doing something good, but most of the time it will be more narcissism defense mechanism. So basically that's what happened. And when they do that, they get what they want. So that's where the problem comes. And if you look into the Quran says directly says that, if you make your nafs your God, then Allah will seal your heart and the ear. So the Quran has already given you the know-how, every detail about it. The psychiatry and psychology connects that and make us aware that whatever said 1400 years ago was correct. The science just established that thing. And there's a lot of things talk about nafs, good nafs, bad nafs, and all those things in Quran. It's very clearly mentioned that you don't follow the nafs, completely. Nafs is good, but not to follow completely. So if you put ownership to it, you know where the trouble comes. So that with this defense mechanism, they will go and fulfill its needs, and you go into a lot of and so it's not worth putting your ownership to it. The other way to go is, if you put ownership to superego, so what will happen? The id will throw a temper tantrum, and the ego has to deal with it. But you remember that superego, if you put all the ownership superego, then what will have, which is Ru, what will happen is that you're not going to sustain the needs what is required, because you're not going to sustain the need of the family life or your world life and all those things, because you have to find middle ground. You cannot go on extreme end to do things. So ego will be in turmoil, how to handle that situation. So it's not wise to put your ownership to superego. So where it comes end down to is ego. You give ownership to ego, and when you give ownership to ego and use mature defense mechanism, then you get the higher ground, and that's what it's all about. So psychiatry tells you that if you use defense mechanism, these are the defense mechanisms you use: humor, sublimation, suppression, anticipation, and there are more of them. So when you use that, then what happens is that you develop sympathy, empathy, compassion, patience. Patience is the outlet, using the defense mechanism and going to that. So these are the what develop then. So these are the things that really makes your ego strong. Sympathy, empathy, compassion, especially compassion, which is really good. Then also patience, also with tolerance. This is very, very important. Patience and tolerance are there. So these are things very, very important. Other thing which makes the ego stronger is sugar or thankfulness and wisdom. These are the things that makes the ego really strong, how to handle the situation. So these are the strength of the ego. If we work on the strength of the ego become very stronger, and using the strength, we can work it out to ego. We don't abolish the id or the nas. You nas will keep on giving you input, but you have to use it appropriately and fulfill the needs as required, not as it wants. And that is the fight ego has to go through it. So you have to strengthen your ego or the cult to get things done. And when you make it the cult strong enough, ego will handle it, that this is the way of life is. And these are the strength which I mentioned about sympathy, empathy, compassion, that will definitely makes, as well as patience, tolerance, hikmat, and sugar. Sugar is very, very important. Quran talks a lot about sugar. Remember, when you're doing sugar, what you're doing, you're acknowledging that the nafs will not run free. You're acknowledging the presence of the Allah and guidance. So the biggest thing which comes in sugar is, which you have to keep in mind, it's not easy. First of all, when we get good things, we do sugar. That's the beginning of it. But have we gone to that level when we have calamity comes and we still do sugar? That is the difference between us and Momin, because they feel that way, they do that way, we don't. So, and the reason why they do it, because Allah could have given worse, and they acknowledge that. If ego acknowledge that part, it's on the right track. So these are very important things. You have to consider that. How you strengthen your ego. When you strengthen your ego, you use a mature defense mechanism. When you use a mature defense mechanism, these are the things, attribute you will do to make your life better. And that is very difficult. I say that it's difficult, it's not that easy. But if you know the pathway to go, then you will go. But if you don't know the pathway, you will struggle for decades not going there. So that is my view about how I can make better life by learning about psychiatry and psychology. With all these things, how can I make strengthen your ego? And these are the things which I mentioned. If you do, the ego becomes stronger with hikmat, shukr, and all those things. So that is very, very important. Other thing which also I will bring it up, I think so this was done in the previous presentation, about happiness. That was significantly important. So I just want to go briefly that human mind is looking for happiness, and there's always a way. So happiness is a very controversial definition, but the most accurate definition came from Ed Diner, which he defined as subjective well-being. And basically, happiness is associated with, if you want to know from neuroscience is associated with serotonin level, not the dopamine levels. The dopamine causes pleasure. Happiness is by serotonin. So let me go through the pathway of serotonin. So these are the pathway. If you the raphe nucleus and the nucleus, raphe nucleus is the main center for the serotonin pathway, and it spreads out throughout the conscious area, as compared to the dopamine pathway, which is from the ventral tegment VTA or nucleus accumbens, and then they spread more towards the unconscious mind and frontal lobe area. So these are the 5 pathways for the dopamine, which we recognize in psychiatry and neurology, that affects that. And these are the centers for the dopamine versus serotonin. So these are the all really established. So nothing can be said about it more than that they exist and it works on us. So happiness is associated with serotonin. So the big thing which I want also, which I discussed in the past also, was Harvard Grant study was started in 1938. More than I think so, 10,000 or more people are enrolled in this study. Study is still going on. Even the US President Kennedy is also involved in this study, was enrolled in that. And they were looking at the happiness of a human being in the lifespan. So, and Dickens' study was also done. And what they strongly found in this study means every walk of life was used here, from a president to a layman person to somebody on the street with no employment and things like that. They pick on that and they follow them throughout their life. And what they have found strongly, that continuous charity and positive relationship was the strongest factor, not the money. That was the strongest finding came out. This study is available. You can look into a heart rate study. It's on internet, so you can follow up with how many patients are there, and they're actively doing it. So it's an eye opener for all of us, that if you want to be happy, you have to have continuous charity and positive relationship. It's not the money, and that was a surprising finding, that money was not the main factor for happiness. The other thing which Martin Seligman looked into different studies, and he looked up and found what are the strong factor for happiness, and he found that positive engagement, positive relationship, positive meaning of life, and accomplishment, these are the strongest factor that he found in all the studies that really contribute to happiness. And if you look into all these things, money is not on the top anywhere. It's contribute to happiness, there's no doubt about that. But if you make money run for the nafs, it's not going to help you. So these are the different studies done in behavior science and psychiatry and even in neurology, to prove that you have to work on your ego. And if you work on your ego or the nafs, to calm the nerves down, it will be very helpful. And these are the things which I talk to you. These are things which I read about it. I like to follow that. Doesn't mean that I am perfect, but nobody's perfect. We are here to work it out, to know the game plan and work on it. So that's what my thinking about the first question which you asked. How can we make it life better, knowing that behavior and science and psychiatry has told about how can we do in the end? These are the things. It's very tough at times, but that's what we have to do. And regarding the other question regarding patience, as I mentioned to you, patient is not a defense mechanism. We use the mature defense mechanism to get to the patient's empathy, sympathy, compassion, and all those things. So that answered that question. So these are the 2 questions which you had, and I answered that. If anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Brother Najib,
Yes.
can you go back why patience is not a defense mechanism?
So, okay. So as I explained, like empathy, sympathy, compassion. So when you have, so when the conflict comes between the super ego and the id, the ego use defense mechanism, correct? These are the defense mechanism. So these are a few of the defense mechanism. So when they use this defense mechanism, you develop patience. You develop empathy, sympathy, compassion. So you have to have a structure which lead to the presentation. And patience is the outward product of humor, sublimation, suppression, anticipation, and other few others. And other thing, why it is not, and that's another good question. So remember, defense mechanism work at unconscious level. Patient work at the conscious level too. We are aware that we have patience. When we have patience, it does not qualify defense mechanism because defense mechanism works at the unconscious level. That's why the unconscious mind is there. These are the factors work to develop patience. So you have to work at unconscious mind only. If patients work at unconscious, patient work at the conscious mind, and it may work at unconscious mind, but it's very obvious at the conscious mind. So that's why it's not a defense mechanism. Did I answer your question?
Okay, let me ask. I don't know if you answered or not because I need more explanation, to be honest with you. So you're saying the defense mechanisms are subconscious,
Yes.
all of them?
Yes. All of them except few of them, but it's suppression, suppression, regression, and few of them goes into conscious mind a little bit, but it's basically theme is subconscious mind. Defense mechanism work on subconscious mind.
Okay, all right.
That's
So
why you have subconscious mind. Very simple. That's why psychiatry go into subconscious mind, that what goes inside your mind which you're not aware of it, and these are your themes. And they look into it with your regular behavior that this theme is running, so this is your defense mechanism running. And that what the psychiatrists and psychologists try to analyze you and say that you're using these type of, like people who are narcissistic. You know, they can say that I'm the best person in the world to them. But a psychiatrist can look up with their narcissism and say, no, you are projecting, distorting the things around you. You think you are the best? Yes, I understand. That's what your view is because your conscious mind is telling you that. But at unconscious mind, which we know, you are using narcissistic defense mechanism. And they don't acknowledge it because, you know, their conscious mind, they're talking about their conscious mind. But a psychiatrist, psychologist look into it and say, no, you're using narcissism defense mechanism. That's how you're working. Very well. You're denying a lot of things. You're denying everything and saying you are the thing, and that's how your conscious mind is working. So yes, defense mechanism work on unconscious mind, not at the conscious mind. A few portion does goes into it. If you go into psychoanalysis, I don't want to go there. We can talk in detail about the ego strength and the situation. They can go into minor detail to look into it and then work on it. But in journal, if you want to learn the concept, remember that defense mechanism works on unconscious mind.
okay, now what prevents us to, I mean, because it's good that you explained this, but what prevents us from having conscious defense mechanisms?
So that's why I say don't go there because you are going to nitty gritty detail on psychoanalysis, correct? So usually think of it that defense mechanism work more than 90% on unconscious mind, more than 95%. Now you want to do psychoanalysis to figure out which process from unconscious mind goes to a conscious mind and how it works. You have to look into ego strength, ego autonomy, ego connection, object relationship, defense mechanism, internal environment, external environment, and there's a whole theory behind that. Trust me, you don't want to go there. So that is psychoanalysis. We are not going there. Neither I'm going, neither you like to go through that. So I'm just telling you.
All right, now you're making me want to go. This is what happens, right? When someone says, don't go somewhere.
You poke and I can answer your question, but please don't go to psychoanalysis now.
Okay, all right. Now, if we say, I want to become more resilient, or I want to raise a resilient child, how do we apply this? Or are we working on the subconscious level
Yes.
when we are saying, like, I want my children to be resilient? So
Correct.
I'm basically teaching them things that will like permeate into the subconscious of them, and then their reactions will be based on that. Is that correct, or I'm wrong?
Yes, that's why we say work on yourself first, correct?
Right.
You can teach 100%, but if you are mean and bullying everybody and talk about all the good things, that what's the child receive? Your unconscious mind is totally going in a wrong direction, and you're just polishing with all the goodies. So you need to work on your issues, correct? And where do you go to work? Unconscious mind. Look at your how things are working with it. You know, you're using empathy, sympathy, compassion, correct? Are you using hikmat? Are you doing shukr? You know, like today, when you woke up in the morning for Fajr prayer, did you do shukr to Allah? That is first thing comes to your mind. Did you do shukr when you woke up and say, well, thanks God, Allah gave me opportunity to call me up today because I was dead when I was sleeping. That should be the way of thinking, that you are so much submerged in Allah's thank that you wake up and say, Allah ka shukr hai, thanks God that I'm alive now and gave me another opportunity to come to you to pray. That is where the unconscious mind comes in, and that is the flow of correction of unconscious mind. When you correct all this thing, conscious mind becomes so clear that it has one way to go. But if you have a conflict going in the unconscious mind, conscious mind will start going backwards and try to fix your unconscious mind issues, and it will not go further. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm have to plug in by batteries running low. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Jordan. I just had something to contribute, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me find the plug and you can keep on talking. Sorry, I have to find the plug.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to contribute to your presentation. I thought it was very interesting, this kind of note of incorporating Islam with this idea of psychiatry, and this idea about the id, the ego, and the superego. It made me think about cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm not sure if anybody's familiar, but it's this new method of therapy that kind of started becoming a thing in the 1980s. And the whole idea is to introduce a cognitive change in the way you act by the repetition of certain behaviors, certain phrases, things like that. And a big aspect of that, I think, relates to Islam. I chant a lot about Islamic prayer, the fact that it's done 5 times a day. We repeat many surahs, things like that. It has this very therapeutic effect of changing our cognition, which, as you said, that as we repeat these phrases, we incorporate the Islamic way of thinking and Islamic behavior into our id, and that eventually propagates and extends to our ego and superego and impacts how our decisions and our moods and things like that. So I just wanted to just add that little aspect there, and kind of how a lot of research currently is proving that to be true.
I think so. You said very well said. You know, reading Quran is very, very helpful. But beyond that, we while reading, we need to understand the context. Also, very important. Once we understand the context and uh, what they are talking about around that, that really affects your ego. It controls your id very strongly, that this is the message Allah has given, and that's what it has its own effect on our ego. So you are 100% right, and I apologize I didn't include that.
Brother Najib, you are fully up?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Um, so what you're saying is that when we do the dua, that we are going into like working on our subconscious.
Correct. So it's working on conscious mind, but indirectly also helping your unconscious mind. Because what you have done when you're doing dua is establishing that you are pretty much nothing, correct? You're asking for forgiveness, you're asking for all the mercy, all the blessing, but nothing of you has significance. What you did right now is kill the id or the nafs. You said to nafs, sorry. I am not the authority. You are not the authority. Allah is the authority. Correct? And He will give you. So don't ask, keep on asking. So you're training your nafs to calm down. I means Allah is the authority, not you. And I will give you something which is within the limit. So it get the flavor that I cannot run the show to the ego, and ego is in a power. So dua is very helpful at the conscious level, and transcend to the unconscious level, because if you keep on doing the behavior, the from the conscious mind, it goes into the unconscious mind, it seeps into unconscious mind more significantly, and then it's become your habit, and it reinforces back again the behavior.
Right. So
Najib, can you also talk about uh, when we make dua, are we also setting goals in our mind? You know, to make changes in our behavior in our life. It starts with setting goals, right? So when we are making dua to Allah, make us a good Muslim, give us enough so we can, take care of our family, give us ilm, right? Can you talk about a little bit about setting goals and the dua?
Correct. It's a good one. So when you're saying dua and asking for Allah's guidance and help to take care of it, it's all depends on your niyat. Are you verbally saying, or you are in depth in contact with Allah? You can keep on saying and just walk away. Oh, I just said that. Correct. You're not sink into your deepest emotion and deepest uh, attitude to get into that thing. So it's very important that you should get really connected with Allah when you're asking it. You just don't, you can ask and Allah will listen to you, Allah will give you. But if you are entrenched into it and wants that, and with all your emotion and from the bottom of your heart you ask that, that makes a huge difference, that you mean it. And Allah also wants to know, well, do you really mean it, or are you just asking for the, even if you ask superficial, Allah will help you, because you went one step, Allah will go 10 steps for you. So Allah will help you. But if you go higher in the deeper ments, and then you set up the goals, I want to be a good person, I want to provide things and all those things. So Allah will listen and then help you, and then it will calm down and the ego become more stronger, so with the help of super ego. So definitely it does help when you're doing dua, because basically, and especially when you do dua in sijda. So when we do sajda, what we are doing, basically your prefrontal cortex, or the hikmat area, goes on the prayer rug. So you're putting your hikmat on the ground, saying to Allah that my hikmat is nothing in front of you. Help me. Give me guidance. Give me a way to get better. So you're telling the id, calm down, you don't exist much. You know, Allah
Yeah.
exists everything. And that will help you. The ego, it strengthens your ego. So
And
definitely it helps the conscious mind as well as
right.
definitely unconscious mind.
And when like and the reason I was asking about setting goals is when you set goals, then you work towards them, right?
Correct.
When it goes into your subconscious mind, you are looking for ways to achieve your goals, right? It
Correct.
might be a friend that might give you directions where to go and gain knowledge, training, and goals can be spiritual, physical, career, job, all those kind of things that human as human we all need, right, to become a full or a better human being, right?
Correct.
Good, thank you.
This is Brother Arif. I just wanted to, give 1 cent. What I have observed that having faith, benefits you in so many ways, physiologically also in our body. So you're talking about, blood pressure, heart rate, cortisol, all kinds of things that, human body deals with. And what I have seen in my clinic is those patients who have faith, they navigate all kinds of problems very beautifully compared to those who have lost faith or never were in faith to begin with, because they are so much upset with everything, every nitty gritty details of life and problem, that they blame to that, versus those who have a faith. So having a habit of making dua, having a faith, benefits you not only psychologically but physiologically also. It has a positive effect on our body. So dua
Arif, you
definitely. Hmm?
Arif, you said very nicely. From the neuroscience, I can establish. Unfortunately, my screen is not moving, so I could have gone there. So, Arif, what you're talking about, that it brings your blood pressure down and all those things. Definitely, from the neuroscience, we know which centers are involved. So, hypothalamus is the center of the unconscious mind, and it does regulate your blood pressure, your respiration, your endocrine, the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, and that is the hypothalamus, connected to your unconscious mind. Basically, is in the unconscious mind, and it's really the center, driving center for the human body. And so a lot of things are in there. The neural connections are there, and they spread out. So when your unconscious mind is calmed down, the hypothalamus with the endocrines and the autonomic and sympathetic nervous system and all those things will calm your body. It has been proven from neuroscience. Apologize, my screen is not moving, so I could not explain from my screen. But you are so right about that.
And Najib, it's a good point that when you have belief, one thing that happens to me is when I think if nobody is with me, at least Allah is with me, and that belief that somebody is with you, looking after you, is such a strong feeling that gives you hope, right? Hope that there is tomorrow, right? And that's what a belief, and somebody who does not believe in a super being, that's to me that what explains that how much a believer gets cured easily compared to somebody who does not believe in anything, right?
Correct. Sorry, I'm going through. This is the slide I was looking at. So this is your suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, and this is where your unconscious mind is. And basically, it regulates the autonomic nervous system, your appetite, the neuroendocrine, the hormones, the temperature, the feeling, the cognition, the mood, the brain functioning. And there is the circadian rhythm, all the rhythms of the body. This is all in your hypothalamus. which is in unconscious mind. So when you pray at unconscious level, this is where the center stimulates and regulate your blood pressure, glucose, eosinophilic clearance. That's where from the kidney and all those. Everything is sitting there in an unconscious mind over there. So sorry about that. The slide was not moving. Now it's moving, so I was able to move out.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Najib. This is Ayub. Can I ask a follow-up? Sorry, I lost
Sure,
connection
go ahead.
when you were
Yes.
answering the question that Brother Wright talked about sabr, and he kind of filled me in where you were talking about sabr is more on the conscious level, so it's not a defense mechanism because it does not go to the unconscious level. Did I capture that correctly?
Yes, so sabr has a conscious component, correct?
Okay. It does,
Dif-
but I just want to hear from the psychiatry standpoint
So
because
psychiatry, so in psychiatry, the defense mechanism work on unconscious mind. They don't work on a conscious mind.
so why wouldn't sabr be at the conscious level? Because again, this
Sabr
is I know
is
you're
at the
talking
conscious
from
level.
okay, no, that's fine, but I understand what you're saying from a psychiatry standpoint, but isn't there because the way I look at sabr or I feel sabr, yes, it is at the conscious level, but yeah, something that we've been hearing from other brothers to even Brother Shahzad said, when we have to rely on our creator, and this might be something psychiatry might have not yet caught up to, because sabr I think is even at the unconscious level, because at unconscious level where you are believing in a creator that you consciously have not seen, right, but is there. So sabr is, in my view, could be at the unconscious level as well, because if it is only at the conscious level, it only addresses the surface concern for a person, but at an unconscious level, even in the most difficult of situations, you are actually calming your ego down as well, for whatever situation you're dealing with. That gives you a better ability to be patient for the difficulties or whatever one is going through. It could even be an opportunity. So what I'm saying is it permeates between both conscious and unconscious. And I don't know if that's that there's more research need to be done, but I just don't think it's only at a conscious level. Sabr, yes, that on the surface it is, but I think there is more depth to the sabr piece with respect to what humans go through.
So I totally get your point. Like empathy, sympathy, compassion, they are object relationships in psychiatry, in psychology. They are not defense mechanism. Now, don't go into minor detail why they didn't do it. They may have spent years and years of discussion. So from psychiatry, I'm talking, So these are the building blocks, how it works, and then how they present. So sabr is the presentation from the mature defense leading to that. But then everybody has their different views. The psychiatrists have this view. The psychiatrist training has this view. Maybe other trainers have different views, which I acknowledge. That means it's not hard and fast rule. Everybody can look differently. So I agree. It looks like it, but everybody has different views.
Thank you, Brother Najib. As always, beautiful presentation.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining.
All right. Touching on Jordan's point, like coming to dhikr and tasbih, does that follow into the subcognitive therapy, or what you guys were kind of alluding to? Because there's a lot of repetition, right?
Yeah, sure, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, and Because your conscious mind goes to unconscious mind. Where's the unconscious mind? One is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the hypothalamus. It's unconscious mind portion, which is the driving center for that, as the slide is right now on. So, and what it does to your body, it's all explained here, in the slide. So definitely it goes to unconscious mind from the conscious mind.
All right. Like, for example, I'm going to talk about myself. Like, when I do tasbih, it's regular, it's normal for me, for example, right? Not like nothing that I don't feel very special, I'll be honest. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with it. It means that I'm not really connected, right? But I've seen other people who, when they do tasbih, they're in a different phase. They're totally in a totally different place than I am. Even, I mean, I know for sure it needs more training on my side, but like I've seen people who repeat it, they have like a lot of joy with it, and they kind of, not exactly in the same physical space that you are, even though you are in the same physical space.
Correct. So to answer, do you want to answer for this, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, this is what we were talking about. Your conscious mind is going for tasbih and reading, but your unconscious mind is not connected to your conscious mind. So when unconscious mind has conflict going on, it's the conscious mind is not connecting well. The people who go into that state, the unconscious mind is totally clear at that moment. And when it's totally clear on one pathway, then conscious mind is totally connected and they hook up very well. So that's why you have to work on your unconscious mind too. You tell your kids, or we tell our kids to pray 5 times namaz, but we don't go into minor detail at the unconscious level. And if we don't do it, we are not doing the services. We are enforcing rule without telling them. Islam is all about telling why we do it, why we pray namaz. What's the benefit it comes out for you. Allah does not need your namaz. We need namaz to save ourselves. So this is what we should do. We should not enforce a punishment on kids just because, we should have not done our job, as a parent. We should tell them what's the reason, what's the benefit, why we want. Allah does not need you. It's all in your interest to pray namaz, and tell them why we need it. So we don't do a work at unconscious level to train them. We always just force at the conscious level. So we are polishing the surface, but it's rotting inside with their questions. And that's why the disconnect is there. And the Sufis and all those Sahabas and all those things were so much higher in their prayers because their unconscious mind was totally clear what they mean. Means that they don't get, like Hazrat Ali used to, never felt the pain in the namaz because his thalamus, which produced the inhibitory pathway of GABA and glycine, completely blocked the pain receptors at the unconscious level. So he didn't even, if somebody hurt him, he does not feel it in the prayers. So that is the level of iman they have at the unconscious level, that they are so much. So Allah is not stopping you. Allah wants you to come in. It's we are stopping ourselves. So we should work on our unconscious mind to clear ourselves, and that will lead to our conscious mind to go much higher. And our namaz, roza, zakat, and all the good deeds. That's just a template I said about prayers, but it can be used for any good deed. If you work on your unconscious mind, things will clear up much better. That's my viewpoint, but everybody may have a different viewpoint.
Right. I don't want to be the only one who's asking questions. I know there are a lot of contributions from the group, but how would you tell, like you said, you have to tell your kids differently. So I'm sure there's difference in ages when you tell your kids about the salah. So you can start with my kids because they're little. Maybe, the other brothers and sisters will benefit as well from how do you convey, what you said so that our kids get the connectedness.
Okay, so the first thing the kid will do is see your parents, correct? They see your parents, how much they humble and humbly praying the namaz, what their connection is, how much they involved in it. That's the eye, through the eye they see that, yeah, day in and day out. You know, are they doing Jamaat together? They are doing prayers as well as dua together, things like that. That really helps them to see what happens. And then the psychiatry and psychology really helps you in here because the level of thinking. I explain in minor detail of symbolic reasoning, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, at what age the child is doing that, you know. So you have to channel the thought based on the maturity of a child, you know. So you know, you don't want to scare them with the death sentence or you will die and all those things when the child is 5 years old, correct? You have to understand what the level of thinking. He's afraid of that. Don't talk about that at this time. It has not developed the concept of that, you know. So you have to go with the thinking, what they are thinking, at what level they are thinking, what level of their logic is, and that is from psychiatry and psychology. There are books and books available at each year. Like at age 5, this is their level of thinking is. At age 6, there's the level. I think so. I send it to you, one of the books too. And there's a whole books of each age group, the behavior development, the neurocognitive development, the psychology development at this age, what is considered normal, what is considered not normal at this age from a psychologist. A whole book yards are available. So we as a parent needs to know that, you know, we just use whatever we feel like, but there's a whole science behind that. So when we do that, they learn much better. You know, they connect you much better, and it goes gradually. Everybody is different, you know. So we have to do gradually and go from there. And with Allah's blessing, everything will be fine. That's my way of looking at it, but everybody has a different view.
Okay, now for me, give me a recipe, a prescription. What do I say to my kids? You know their ages. So,
I
well,
gave you that book also, correct?
I know, but it doesn't talk about what you say about the salah.
Of course, it won't talk about
Yes, but I need
Salah, but it talks about
sentences.
the level of.
Right, I need sentences. I need you to say, for them, this is appropriate to say. For example, it doesn't have to be like you're going to tell me everything, but tell me like,
First, you like to know what they think about it, correct? First, they see it, then you open up the sentence by saying, "Tell me more about it." You know, what do you think about namaz? You know, what your impression is, why we do it. So, you're just trying to carve out how much they know about it, what their feeling is, what their intention is, and all those things. Once you have a clear picture of mapping what their thinking and logic is, then you build the structure. You don't build the structure not knowing what they know about it. You know, may have know something differently. So you have to reconnect and know first the ground level, where they are, how much higher or lower they are. Once we know them, and in a very humble, nice, playful manner, ask them, and you may not able to get the answer one time. You may take weeks to get the answer, a clear picture. You know, you do a pre-test for a lot of things before you get into it. So it's just like scooping out how much they know and how much they care about it. And do they care about it or not? You know, about, and then go from there. So there's not a quick answer to your question. uh, and every child is different. Some child is very precise, observant, and they will engage with you. Some child don't care about it, and they have their temperament and the behavior, and you have to deal with that. You know, so my both girls are totally different. One is really open, other is shows her temperament on that, and we have to go with that and make them comfortable before we talk about it. So there's not a quick one answer to a question. Hopefully, I answer your question, but I know that that's not the ultimate answer you're looking for.
no, that this is a good starting point, honestly, right? Like scoping and getting to know what they understand about the salah, and probably brings more points into discussing the value of the salah, so that you know they get that concept, or maybe they can open something that I never thought of, so we can, you know, discuss it or get more information. I never find conversations with kids to be useless. There's always something, right, that you learn from your kids on what they know or what you need to learn yourself. So this is really
Correct. So you're doing a building block. You're trying to figure out what's the lowest level or the baseline level is. And once you know the building, then you build the block. But if you don't know the ground, how are you going to build the whole structure of namaz to them?
right. No, this is a great point. Thank you, Brother Najib. And this is not a compliment. This is what I feel. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, great. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? All right. If
Ryan, one comment.
yes, please.
I know your kids' ages. My kids all have matured up. The thing at your kids' age, it is what they see that Najib was saying, what their parents do, right? And I'll tell you one thing: after raising 5 kids, they can see hypocrisy from a miles away. If we say to them, go and pray, and we don't, and if they see that we don't pray, then they will become the same thing. They will pray when they are in front of us, but when they are in dorms or away from us, they might not pray. It is what we do from day one. And they see they are silent observers. They are like sponge that will absorb everything. And so we have to be very careful. And I always give an example that if somebody calls and we tell our kids, pick up the phone and tell them, Baba, father is not home, right? Kind of things. They create an image of parents and how they behave in different situations, and unconsciously, and when what Najib talks about unconsciously, they become just like us, So we have to be very careful what we say and how we act in different situations in front of them. At your kids' level, you cannot reason at this point, in my opinion, and I may be wrong. It is our behavior, whatever we want them to become, we have to first do it practically in front of them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The other thing is that children see what we are doing, how we are behaving, and they absorb things, as you said. And even if they are not doing exactly how we expect them to do, that absorption that they are having, I've listened to many lectures from child psychiatry and child psychology, and they say that they come back to down the line, say if they are 15 or 20, or then when they mature to 25, 30, eventually they come back to doing what they were supposed to do.
Very true.
I would not lose hope on that. Our objective should be to do what we are supposed to do,
Yeah.
and children will eventually come back to that at certain age or certain time in their life.
And there's Hazrat Ali's call that I've heard from so many different people. So I will say it is kind of authentic that from age 0 to 7 is the time when we teach kids values, mannerism, uh, religion. They don't know about they don't know what religion is. Their religion is what we follow, what we practice, father and mother practice every day. That's what their Islam is. It's not the Islam that is in Quran Sharif or in Hadith. What we follow is what their religion is. And like you said, it goes in their subconscious. Anything you do on a daily level for a number of years goes into your subconscious. That's how we train the mind. And they say from 7 to 13 or 14 years, from 7 on, you become their advisor, kind of, and by 13, 14 years, kids learn to say no. And the moment they do that, then your job is done. I went to my kids' commencement yesterday, and I forgot the name of the speaker, and she said to her, your job is done when the kid gets his undergrad degree, right? Now they are going to go into this world with all the tools that parents have given, and the world through the worldly education, right? So she said once you get that undergrad diploma degree, then you are done. You have done your job, whatever right or wrong.
Yeah, as they say, for 7 years, you play with your child, 7 to 14, you teach them, and from 14 onwards, you become friends with them.
Yeah, and
So,
Hazrat Ali's call has so much
mhm,
depth in it.
So
mhm.
both comments are excellent. And from behavior science and psychiatry, I can give you the quotations which we feel that. So parents are the superego. So basically, a child's superego are the parents. They learn
Wow,
from parents. So yours, anybody's superego is coming from your parents, from
wow.
the community, from the higher sources where they lead. That's your superego from behavior science and psychiatry. They didn't put religion because, of course, religion is not the field they put it, but higher source is parent is a superego concept.
Yeah.
So this is psychiatry and psychology. The other concept which you mentioned about from age 2 to 6 or 7, that is the core time of MP development
Yeah.
in psychiatry and psychology. That is where the crucial time of empathy develops in a child.
Mm.
So a child has narcissistic from the beginning because it wants milk, it wants everything, it's following the id, the nafs, and wants that. But it comes out of it if you develop empathy. So the first 7 years or 8 years of life is the empathy window period. If you develop a good empathy during that time, it will last forever. You know, but if you miss it, they may develop empathy later on. But the golden time is first seven
Yeah.
years. And when you have empathy, you have a good understanding of your religion. But if you are narcissistic
Yeah.
from
Yep.
the beginning and never develop empathy, you have a problem. Now you are on having trouble because your it does not recognize. It says, I want my way. So
And
that's
feeling
behavior
for
science and
others.
psychiatry.
No, that's very good, Najib. Uh, and that's why I've just finished Surah Bani Israel tafsir from Dr. Israr Ahmed, and at the end of the in the last chapter, last section, uh, Allah is telling Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that Quraysh used to ask Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, why didn't Allah give Quran to an angel, right? Why you? Why somebody who's mortal? And Allah, in reply says, if the people on earth were angels, then an angel would have come with the Quran, right? Because you are a bashar, and that's why we brought a human being. Otherwise, you would have said in so many words that angel can be, perfect. Humans cannot be, right? So that Quran might not for me, and that's why we have Quran, right? Because we make mistakes.
Correct.
Uh, we have egos that we want everything for ourselves, and Quran stops us. And I tell my kids that Quran is for people who are powerful, mostly for powerful and rich. When you are poor and you are weak, then you do sabr, what you were explaining in your lecture earlier. It is the time when we walk on this earth, with our head high and chest out. That's when we have to be humble, right? And what you're talking about, empathy. And if you don't develop empathy, then you don't care about others. How others feel, what pain they go through. My understanding.
Mhm.
The other thing which is Bani Israel, which really strikes me, is also mentioned to the Bani Israel that if you don't follow, you're just like a donkey carrying the book. And that was
Yes.
referred to Bani Israel, but also referred to Muslim also. We
Yep.
read and we don't understand. That's where our problem is.
Najib,
Don't
I
understand
always,
the context of it.
yep, no, the very good point. Yes, it says. And I tell my kids, if Allah decides to write another holy book, guess what? Which race is gonna use as an example? Are Muslims. Yeah.
Some of the Muslims, not all the Muslims, so that we're more specific, brother.
It is. And in Quran Sharif, it
Let's-
says that in Bani Israel, there were good people too, because they converted to Islam too, right? So we're talking about how the majority is behaving these days, right? Except we don't bury our child or our girls today. But if you look around, and I would say I'm the first one, we are following some of the things that the reason Quran came down for.
Yes, but also let's remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al khayru fi ummati ila yawm al qiyamah." The good will remain in my ummah until the day of judgment. So there are
Inshallah.
good people, and we choose which ones we want to be, right? If we want to be
True.
with the good or not. I think, the purpose of this presentation is to work on oneself. So this
True.
is what we need to do, inshallah, work on ourselves.
Inshallah.
And worry about ourselves, because at the end we're going to be facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will only ask us about what we did, not what other people did. And this is why we should concentrate on being better, and also surrounding ourselves with people who are good, so that we learn from them. There's tawasi bil haqq wa tawasi bil sabr, right? That we help each other into doing good, inshallah.
True. And it is a company, right? It is the company that one keep, because guess what? You become one of them very soon. The people you hang around with, right? And very important, the friends we choose.
Exactly. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that al-mar'u ala dini khalilih falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil. You are on the way of life of those whom you befriend.
Yep.
So be careful with whom you befriend with, right? So alhamdulillah, inshallah, there are a lot of good people, really great Muslim people that we learn from. And, in this class, we have those when we do the tafsir, alhamdulillah. So
Yes.
this is what we need to.
It's a blessing. True, very true. It's a blessing that we have. One thing, Ryan, that inshallah, what we talk about, we have almost, lived our life, right? And the most important thing to me is how to make sure the next generation, and if you go a little further, the generation that will follow our kids, right? The next, how they gonna fare, especially living in America. I know it is your concern, years that since I've known you, and same thing to me. How much Islam they will follow, my kids, and then what they will transfer to their kids. That is something we all have to think about. Beyond. That we sit together and learn, people like from you, from Najib, but something to ponder upon what we have to do for our next generation. And it is beyond just giving lectures. How do we train them, that they stay on the right path.
Yes, excellent points, brother Cesar. Actually, today, Sister Amani brought her kids, and we want them to listen to this, not only so that they learn, so that they also help us know what we can do for them and look forward. We have to plan forward. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he raised children, and one of them is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, because he learned in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? There were things that he provided for him, and this is what we want to follow. The example of the Prophet. So that we want your kids everybody's kids, Farzana's kids, everybody, Brother Amir, Jimmy, or, to join us, inshallah, so that they give us ideas, because sometimes we are on one end that we think as parents, these are the needs of our kids, which we could be correct the majority of the time, but to refine it and make it better, we need to listen, from our own kids. What can we do to make, the masjid a more welcoming place? How can we make them more proud of their own religion and be steadfast? Because the challenges are big, and we understand that their challenges are big. We want to talk also on issues of marriage, how
Yes.
young generations can meet each other, in an Islamic context, and marry, or at least know about each other. Inshallah, this is the purpose of this program. So please,
Inshallah. I will.
just contributions, inshallah.
Right. Couldn't agree with you more. Inshallah, we'll try to put together a session where we bring our kids and they sit with us and we listen to them, listen to their concerns. I think you have raised a very good point. I think that's a starting point.
Jazakallah, brother. I have to go, inshallah.
Okay, thank you so
meet
much.
again.
Thank you.
Good to see
Khuda
you.
Hafiz.
Subhanallah, we will end the meeting now. Inshallah, we will see you next week.
Okay.
I'll make a dua. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحانك ربي رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خير إن شاء الله.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Najib and Raid. Good
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.